Okay, welcome to the Thursday Night Big Book Study Workshop with the program of recovery. My name's Tony Roberts. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Sobriety date's April 8, 1989. Welcome to the Keystone Group. How we open this meeting is with the Serenity Prayer. What do we need for a good meeting, Ray? God. Grant me the serenity.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference.
Who are you, Ray?
It's
What's
all yours,
going on?
Tony.
Well, first, how about introducing yourself, brother? How you doing?
I'm Ray Shepard. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
That he
been
is.
In these rooms. I've been in these rooms for a long time, but I've been sober since the 19th of October, 1988, and that I am grateful.
He's been here a long time, but he's gathered no dust, so it's not too shabby. For those following along, our sole aim is to be of service and help people go through this. We're at Bill's Story. We put the talks online for people in remote communities or people who want a little more in-depth, slow it down a bit and kind of go through the process. We have worksheets. We have a Facebook group that we have discussions on. So, the whole thing is designed for your success. Right, and that's what in meetings, the whole design of Alcoholics Anonymous, the process that we're going through. A lot of people have heard me say this more than once. I've never met anybody who's ever gone through this, who's ever relapsed, and who's maintained it over the last 36 years, which is pretty remarkable when you think about that, including myself. Right, so as we go through this thing, we find that there's a definite process to this, right? And where we're at in Bill's story here is the beginning of that process, right? And so as we start going through this thing, we've gone through it in great detail. You can get caught up by going back over the talks if you wish to join us. Well, we're kind of at Bill's story, and we're tying in the doctor's opinion here. So in the doctor's opinion, we've covered some things, but where I wanted to cover tonight in regards to where we are, Roman numeral XXVIII. And they talk about here, if you want to, are you there, Ray?
I'm there.
So men and women drink, essentially.
Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol.
I've never had to explain that in the last 36 years. No one's ever said, what do you mean by... Maybe an Al-Anon lady once asked me, what do you mean by that? But most of us know the effect produced by alcohol. It's like the promises coming true, right? Okay,
yes. So the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity.
Without consequence. Because Ray talked about it. Yeah. Because a lot of us think we have a consequence problem when we come here because we don't understand alcoholism. And the second thing is a lot of people read this irritable, restless, and discontent and think, oh, that's alcoholism. Well, that's the human condition without a solution, right? If you don't have a solution for the human condition, you're going to be a little irritable with all the mayhem and chaos that you've created in your life. Anybody? Like when you sober up and have a good look around, it's kind of doesn't give you a warm, fuzzy feeling, does it? So unless you find a viable solution to the human condition, what's always been our solution, right?
So here's what they did. After they succumbed to the desire again, as many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. And this is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery.
And so the doctor, so hold on a sec. So the doctor's making these observations. As we went through Bill's story, did we see that unfolding in Bill's story? right?
Yes.
Like where he made this solemn oath not to drink again, but he found himself drinking again. He saw he could not take so much as one drink. He was drinking again. He went to treatment. He left treatment. The first time he thought self-knowledge was the answer. How many people, right? And then he went the second time, right? And so the second time and the first time, same facilities, but we see he's having a different experience the second time, yes? And he leaves there, but he understands his condition a little more, right? And fear keeps him sober for a bit, right? But what's missing from his life? Is a solution viable enough to create this change? A solution what? Of depth and weight, right? He has a frothy emotional appeal. People are pleading with him. People are trying to do interventions with him, right? He got his family his brother-in-law, his wife, the community. Everybody's trying to fix Bill, yes? And Bill's trying to participate in the solutions being offered to him, but it's not enough. And remember when they started the doctor's opinion here, he was talking about this person coming back to his facility for the third time and acquiring some information. So it talked about, and on the other hand, unless you wanted to add something, brother, sorry.
I did. I wanted to make comment that he's really emphasizing and re-emphasizing what we read at the top of page Roman numeral 28, where he said that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. He's talking about the chronic alcoholic, the endpoint alcoholic that he treats, the hopeless alcoholic. And he's saying he observes this in these alcoholics, that they get this jittery feeling. They get, as he said, restless, irritable, discontented. It could be annoyed, agitated, just angry. But they have developed this, as he said, the habit of reaching for a drink whenever they get to that standpoint, that point. As he said, they're seeking that sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. And so he said they repeat this over and over because they cannot stop that phenomenon that we have within us, whatever that phenomenon is. He calls it craving. We call it allergy because it's easier to understand. But he said that's the driver for us alcoholics. And he's making the point that these chronic alcoholics that he observes, he sees that phenomenon. Your experience may not be where they are yet. You keep on drinking, you'll get there.
And as we went through this, so we start seeing that this thirst, or the step one promises, we're doomed to repeat it regardless of our experience with it, right? There's really no defense, and he talks about the only defense that these types that are beyond his capability of helping is an entire psychic change. Where he got that from was witnessing what happened to Bill. And he's talking about these certain types that are beyond his scope of helping. And he talks about, on the other hand,
now, on the other hand, and this is where he's going with this thought process, that we need this psychic change. He said, on the other hand, and strange as this might seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of solving, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. So now, I think the word suddenly, we're going to come and visit that word suddenly when we get to chapter 3, and it's going to be in a different connotation. But I think it's important that we realize that Silkworth is laying the groundwork here, that suddenly when we have this change, this psychic change, as he said, that we suddenly are easily able to resist the desire.
And you want to underline that, right? Because a lot of people give you the impression you're never going to think about it again, right? And so as they expand on this idea that happens, so in Bill's story, when we're at page 12 here, and we're going to start with my friend suggested, but if we go back in the history of Bill, we've seen would he be the classification of a person who seemed doomed to an alcoholic death?
Silkworth even prescribed him hopeless. Absolutely doomed.
So we see that in the story so far. The first time in treatment, he felt good. The second time in treatment, he's feeling really bad. And now he's about to go back to treatment for the third time. What we're going to look for, the difference in the third time, was the element that wasn't available the first two times. And that's the same when people come into recovery. Just because you're in AA doesn't, you could have the same experience Bill did the first time. Oh, surely this is the answer. Then you could have the experience coming back again the second time, right, where you're baffled, doomed, and kind of a little shaken, and then you exert yourself even more. So two things are not happening there. One, you don't understand what you're up against, and two, the viable solution hasn't taken place yet. So let's see what happens in Bill's story that makes a difference, because he's going back to the same facility, surrounded by the same people, right, in a more desperate state. But there's something different this time that wasn't available the last two times. And that's the same experience we have to have in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's see what that is. My friend suggested.
So here we are. Now remember, Bill and Ebby have been arguing. Ebby is trying to present this idea to Bill, and Bill is resisting because it doesn't meet with his beliefs. But here's the change. My friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? He said, that statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. He said it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required to make my beginning. I saw that growth could start from that point on a foundation of complete willingness. I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would.
So we see that Bill reconfirmed step one with Ebby, right? They're both beyond human aid. But he's seen a change in his friend, and his friend's laid out a course of action that he took. He presented it to Bill. And Bill seen it was a matter of just being willing to believe and do the same course of action that he might build what he saw in his friend. So Bill just did steps 1 and 2, and then he made a decision, would I have it a course or what? He did 3. But nothing's changed. You know what the problem is now? He knows what the solution is now, and he knows he needs to do a course of action in order to have the same experience his friend did. Otherwise, he's just left with the problem, the understanding of the solution, and no viable course of action unless he follows through with it. Does that kind of make sense? So let's see what happens here.
Yeah, it's very similar to his first visit to Towns Hospital. Silkworth told him what the problem, and he said, I recognize the problem. He said, I got the solution myself. And that proved to no end. But here's how Bill goes on. He said, thus was I convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. We're going to come and revisit that when we get to the ABCs in chapter 5. Convinced that God's concerned with us when we want him enough. And at long last, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I had needed and I had wanted God. Remember, he's in the cathedral. He's getting ready to go to war. He's probably going to face certain death, and he is there, and he has as a spiritual experience. He doesn't say that, but he says much moved. There's something going on inside of him, and much moved. He goes outside, and he has another experience when he looked at this tombstone, and it says Thomas Thatcher and his best friend Ebby Thatcher is going over to France with him to fight in war, and he's thinking, is this a relative of Ebby's? And so he's got this experience that's already in the workings. And he said the real significance of that experience burst on me. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. There'd been a humble willingness to have him with me.
I like that. For a brief moment. Then I started thinking.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do anything the first week. Second week is, whoa, wait, let's not get carried away here, right? Okay.
It takes a while for the click and clack to the brain to go away.
Right. Yeah.
And Bill said, look, he said that there'd been a humble willingness to have him with me. He came, but soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. And so it had been ever since, how blind I had been.
So again, that'll be our biggest challenge all the way through this, is the human experience interfering with the spiritual experience, right? So it's going to be that way forever. So we need a recipe in order to navigate that. Otherwise, the mind always wins, right? And if you haven't had the experience the doctor talks about, then it's just a matter of time before the insanity of the first drink returns. And there's no notification for that, right?
And that battlefield is continual. There's always this human element that's always rubbing up against this spiritual element within us.
And there's two different things here. There's the human experience, and then there's alcoholism. A lot of people think they're one and the same, right? We need to have one removed so we can deal with the other. But in order to deal with the other, it's a two-prong approach here. We apply these spiritual principles right through this course of action that eliminates the one problem so we can start dealing with the other problem, right? His human problems. As long as alcoholism is still present, he'll never be able to develop for any period of time, as we've seen in the story, right? The insanity of the first drink always returns. Whether it's a good time, bad time, or a different time, it doesn't matter. As long as it's lying dormant, something happens beyond his ability to see, feel, and touch, and he finds himself drinking again. Remember when he even questioned his own sanity? Somebody pushed a drink. He was doing good. How many times was he doing okay? Now it's just the same story. Right? I don't want to drink, I'm drinking. I don't want to drink, I'm drinking. So we see Bill's not, he's not struggling with the idea of being able to control and enjoy his drinking. He's struggling that he keeps drinking when he doesn't want to. Does that kind of make sense? There's something happening.
Strong point.
There's something happening to him. Yeah. So we see now he's confirming his decision that he did at the kitchen table. It could have been weeks or months. I'm not too sure the history of that, but he's going to follow through. A lot of us do step 3, and we take a while before we start step 4. What confirms step 3 is the beginning of 4. It's the beginning of the unraveling, or the beginning of the solution necessary to bring about this change. Steps 1, 2, and 3 isn't that change. It's just the foundation to move forward, to bring about the course of action. Okay? So there's
a lot of history that goes on after the second sentence on page 13 to the beginning of at the hospital. We're not going to go into it, but he had gone back to the mission to see Abby and realized that he needed to go back to the hospital. And so here he is at the hospital. I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise. I was showing signs of delirium tremens. In the hospital, I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction.
So that's interesting. As he then understood him, he had a new understanding. It's different than when he had before meeting with Ebby. After he met with Ebby, he seen that it was possible to have access to this power. It was just a matter of willing to believe. His friend was inwardly rearranged, right? There was something different about him. He seen he could get access to this power to create the change. So his new understanding after talking with Ebby is way different than before talking with Ebby. Before talking with Ebby.
Actually comes. That comes out of what he talked about on this previous page, is he's arguing with Ebby. Ebby said, look, choose your own conception of, choose your own idea and your own plan of how you're going to access this power. I've shown you how I've done it. Do however you want to do with it.
Yep.
And here he is. This is what he's doing. He said, I placed myself, I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, and without him I'm lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins, my wrongdoings, and I became willing to have my newfound friend take them away, root and branch, and I've not had a drink since.
Notice not to work on them. Take them away and work on them. So if you had a choice between having your difficulties taken away or to work on them, how many people would like to work on them or have them taken away? I'd rather have them taken away. I have enough to deal with on a daily basis without dragging me along with me everywhere I go, right?
So at the hospital, Ebby comes back to visit him. And while it doesn't say it here, he's gonna come to this and talk about it at the end of chapter 2. But he brings a special book with him when he comes back to visit Bill, William James' Variety of Religious Experiences for Bill to read. And as he talks here, and my schoolmate visited me, and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. We made a list. Both of them together make a list of the people I had hurt and toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability.
Which is, so what's the difference this time compared to the last two times? And that's the same within our fellowship. What will make the difference between us being successful in the road to long-term sobriety or the road back to leading us to where we don't want to be? And that what we call that sponsorship now, big book-based sponsorship. And the difference the third time here is his friend's taking him through a course of action that his friend did. He's passing on that experience that he talked about at the kitchen table. This is how that people passed on to him, suspending his sentence, right? Remember, there's a couple of people that talked to the judge and had him suspend his sentence so they could take Ebby through a course of action. And now Ebby showed up at Bill's place to talk about his experience. Bill seen it was possible that he could have the same experience if he did the same thing he did. In the hospital here, he's doing the same course of action his friend did. Right? That's the difference this time compared to the last two times, is his friends offering him a course of action that the doctor witnessed of these new ideas that he implemented and put into practice. He acquired certain ideas. Remember how the doctor started the letter off? Right? Upon his third treatment, before witnessing this, before this stage here, the doctor deemed him hopeless. Now the doctor's watching this process happening within his facility. Yes? And Ebby's showing up to help him do this thing, to have the same experience. He's navigating him because Bill's brain is obviously going to take him other places other than the course of action being presented. That's why sponsorship, that's why we do big book studies like this, workshops, to stay the course, right? We're tweaking the GPS for a new route, right? Okay. God's prayer system. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and that comes back to what you said before about this constant clitter-clack we have between our alcoholism and our human condition. Ebby is there to remind him of the two things that are at work that are opposing this recovery process of his. Yeah, and so he goes through this process. And as he said, my schoolmate visited me. I fully acquainted him with my problems, my deficiencies. We made a list of people I had hurt or to whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach them, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. And then he says, I was to test my thinking by this new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself except as my requests bore on my usefulness to others, and then only might I expect to receive, and that be in great measure. And I can see the hand of Ebby as he's talking with Bill, emphasizing these comments that Bill is writing about here. Test your thinking, Bill, by this new God consciousness within. The way you think, your common sense, it's got to become pushed to the background. It's got to become uncommon. And sit quietly when in doubt. Ask for direction, ask for guidance, ask for strength to meet the problems as this power would speak to you and guide and direct you. It's a strong paragraph there of recovery.
100%.
So my friend promised.
And we promise.
We're done.
His friend and we promise, right? Ray and I, we promise.
Absolutely. When these things are done, and this is very important, because when we get to chapter 4, we're going to go through this in even greater detail, this process. But in essence, what Bill has done, he's set aside his prejudices. He's become willing to believe he can access this power, and he's admitted the possible existence of this power that's beyond his own mind. And he said, my friend promised, when these things are done, I would enter into a new relationship with my Creator. I might have had an old relationship with the Creator, but now we got a new relationship with my Creator.
And I tell guys, I know deal with a lot of people who are relapsers. I don't know why they call me. They have nothing to do with me when they're sober before, but all of a sudden they start calling me. And I said, let's forget everything you know. And they almost offended, like something they knew before was helping them. I said, look, I was 11 years in and out. Like, I had a profound knowledge of useless information that I got to share at meetings that a lot of people also kind of, yeah. So the guys who helped me said, let's forget everything you know to have a new experience. And they started taking me through the book. And it was like, all this stuff was new to me. It was like, first time I got introduced to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was in 1989. Before that, it was all 12 and 12. I was in 4 12 and 12 studies before my last relapse, right? 4 of them, right? So I did 360 meetings in 90 days. I'm in 4 12 and 12 studies, talking about Bill's experience, thinking I'm doing the steps, right? But I never did what Bill did to have that experience. So how can I deepen and broaden something I haven't done yet or expand on it? Right? It isn't happening, right? Okay, go ahead.
So my friend promised when these things were done that I would enter into a new relationship with my Creator. I would have the elements of a way of living that answered all of my problems. Belief in the power of God. I think that's important. We realize it's the belief in the power of God. We just got done talking about Bill recognizing Ebby had no more power in him than he had in himself, yet Bill was looking at a miracle across the table from him, wondering how did he access that power? And Ebby is saying that God had done for him what he can't do for himself. Bill's emphasizing then this belief that this belief in the power of God is the key element, plus enough willingness, enough honesty, and enough humility to establish and maintain this new order of living. These were essential requirements.
So what he was just given was the recipe for success.
The recipe.
He has to develop. He's got the access code now. He's had a brief kind of connection with this thing. There's something going on with him that he's having his own experience now. He's moved from the cheese factory, right, into the consciousness of, there's something happening here. But I need to continue this, right? That's his friend promised. Because a lot of us mistaken that one-time euphoric feeling as long-term success, right? I need to enter a daily kind of reprieve here. And he has the recipe for that. And you notice nowhere in there did it talk about work on his alcoholism. Right? Because the alcoholism consists of the insanity of the mind, right, that he talked about, the insidious insanity, and the allergy of the body. If I can't stop myself from taking a drink, and when I take a drink, all hell breaks loose because I can't control the amounts I take, I'm always going to have consequences. Right? Always. Even the nights that I don't have consequences, the consequences are still there from the impact of untreated alcoholism, meaning the illness is still present.
So as Bill goes on, he said, when I did these things, he said this was important, that this was simple. It wasn't easy to do. But he said a price had to be paid, and it meant the destruction of self-centeredness. He said, I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. Now, notice the gravity of that sentence. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. It's almost impossible not to be in the center of your own world, because you are the center of your own world. But as we look at how we implement this recovery process, it's saying, don't think of yourself so damn much. Think of others more than you. And so as Bill is giving us this recipe, we're going to go through the next 2 pages where he's going to talk how he destroyed self-centeredness, or the process that he was going through to destroy self-centeredness.
So in how it works, it says what we used to be like, what happened, and what we're like now. We've seen what Bill used to be like. We've seen the what happened part is the process he just went through. And then we're going to see what he's like as the result of that course of action that he's implementing in his life. Right? Go ahead.
So he says, these are revolutionary and drastic proposals. But the moment I fully accepted them, telling me there's a spectrum of, you are accepting, you're accepting, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric.
So is it in accepting it or by doing it? Accepted I had to do these things. Not acceptance is the answer to all my problems. We can stop reading now. That's the end of the book. And isn't that great? Wouldn't that be nice? No, is the engagement of these principles that go against self. Common sense would become uncommon sense. Right?
That's a strong point there, Tony. Yes. So, revolutionary and drastic proposals. The moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up, as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. This is actually a recalling of his grandfather's spiritual change on Mount Aelus. His grandfather was a rip-roaring alcoholic, and he's up on Mount Aelus and had this spiritual experience. He races down the mountain, he races into church, he pushes the preacher off the podium, and he tells the congregation of this spiritual experience and describes it in this way. That he said, I'm standing up there and it's like a wind of spirit is roaring through me. That's how it felt. And when you talk about, is Bill describing this, talk about an electric effect. And Bill said, for a moment I was alarmed. And I called my friend, the doctor, and I asked him, am I still sane? And he listened to me in wonder as I talked. Now, this, I think, is incredulous. Bill, remember, he was under this belladonna treatment. It's an hallucinogen, but he's off the belladonna for a couple of days here. And so Silkworth comes and listens to him. Now, remember, Silkworth had dealt with thousands and thousands of alcoholics. He knew what the process was as they were coming off of belladonna. And he knew about the hallucinations and when they would leave. And Silkworth said, something's happened to you, and I don't understand it. But he said, you better hang on to it because it's better than the way that you were. This is really important because Silkworth was the one that pronounced him hopeless, doomed. And he's now listening to a change in Bill, as Bill is describing something. Something's happened within me I do not understand. You know, in fact, Bill writes about this in other places where he writes about his spiritual experience. He said, you know, I was there, I was lying in bed, and he said, I'm still arguing and wrestling with God. And he said, I yelled out, if there be a God, show yourself to me. And he said at once the room just seemed to light up. There's this intense light, and very similar to what he's describing here. The effect is electric. There's something happened to Bill by immediately throwing out that question, if there be a God, show yourself to me.
So be careful what you pray, right? Because, I mean, in early sobriety, when I needed a new experience, because like Bill, all my other experiences, Roman Catholic, Pentecostal, right, Baptist, all these other things, the charismatic movement, like all that stuff wasn't enough to sustain me in the life that I was looking for. So when I got sober, it was like, that was the most powerful prayer I think I've ever had and still have, is show me. Show me. I hear all this stuff, show me, but be prepared. Like, be prepared, right? Okay.
Yeah, and that prayer you've mentioned many times. I like how you say it. Show me what you got.
Show me what you got. Yeah.
It is one of these prayers that we often think, oh, we're being rather confrontative with God. Well, yes, we are. Because I want to know. I want to have the assurance that you got my back. 100%. And I find out that he's got more than my back. He's got me, totally. So, Bill, as he writes on, he said, you know, Silver shook his head. He said, something's happened to you I don't understand. You better hang on to it. Anything's better than the way you were. The good doctor now sees many men who have had such experiences.
Why is he seeing these people? Because there's a new movement happening within his facility on the people that are beyond his reach. He's watching this message being carried to these people, the application of it, and he talked about those two cases that closed the doctor's opinion. Right, Bill's an expansion of this. He says, I've seen many since then. He don't understand it, and later they call it a phenomenon. Right? It's an unexplainable event, same like our illness is an unexplainable event that happens in the mind. The spiritual solution is a phenomenon. We don't know how it happens, but it seems to be happening through the application of these principles and a willingness to believe. Right? It's just like we can't apply this to alcoholism, so we apply it to the human dilemma by getting self out of the way to get access to this inner resource that has us having a new experience. Imagine walking through your own experience and being at peace and ease with everything, and being at so much peace that you're alarmed by it. I mean, I wish that for everyone. I remember when that happened to me, but that's a talk for a different day. Okay, go ahead.
So as I lay in the hospital, the thought comes to mind. There are thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what has been so freely given to me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They in turn might work with others. This is an offshoot of Evie coming to visit Bill. Bill seeing this change that has been wrought within him as the result of that visit, the change in his whole attitude that he has, and he's realizing, if he could only pass this on to someone else, how could I do that? In the hospital, this is his third visit to the hospital, and he's about ready to get out. This is going to be in December of 1934, the 18th of December, when he gets released from the hospital. He's going to go out and put this into practice right away.
And so how I understand that is kind of like this. This is a different guy than the guy that pushed a drink across the table to his friend.
Yeah.
He's lying in the hospital. It's kind of like this. He was drowning, dying in the sea of alcoholism. Right? Somebody plucked him from the water, put him in the boat, brought him to the main ship. He got utilized or got brought back to health. And he had the moment of, there's still people in the water. He went and grabbed a handful of life preservers, got back in the lifeboat, and went out looking for other ones. Where other people who claim to have this experience go sit and start watching TV and talk about how close they were to dying. Two different experiences. This guy's getting back in the lifeboat with a handful of life preservers. These other people that we hear in the fellowship, they go back to their lives, to their thing, and they don't have that earnestness of that deep sense of, my God, there's other people who are dying just like me. Right? And what was so freely given to me, I have that sense that I need to get back in the boat to help these people like I was helped. That's pretty profound when you think about that, right?
It's earth-shaking is what it is. Because I can remember in the fundamentalist churches that I went to, that you just went through the motions thinking that was going to work. Here we have someone who took the actions. He didn't just go through the work, he took the actions of, and he's now realizing that's the important part. You can't just put motion to this. You've got to become involved with this.
Well, look, you're 36 years. I'm 36 years. I look forward to showing up here tonight. My whole day was being a part of this. We got the Tuesday going. We got the Monday going. Like, we're very involved in the process of helping other people to the same opportunity that was freely given to us. That's pretty remarkable. 36 years later, and to be more excited about it today than the day we first discovered it. That's pretty wild when you think about that, okay?
It is. People call me a fanatic, but I am. I'm fanatical that way. So, Bill, as
I wouldn't know that experience. No. Go ahead.
Bill's going to put into action now what he said at the top of this page.
So my friend promised, but we're promising too, right? We're having the same thing. Okay, go ahead.
But we're also taking action here where it says we got to have this destruction of self-centeredness.
Yeah.
And here's how he went about and did this. He said, my friend had emphasized, this is Ebby telling Bill, I had to emphasize the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs.
Sounds like our step 12, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like our step 12? It didn't say practice these steps in all our affairs. It says practice these principles, right? Bill took the steps, had an experience, now he's got to live these principles to enhance that experience, right?
So perhaps, and he said particularly here, it was imperative that I work with others.
Imperative.
Imperative as he had worked with me. Faith without works is dead. How appallingly true for the alcoholic. If an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he would not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead.
So what's interesting, in our process later, the most critical step of utilizing is step 11, is the only step later that has the 24-hour plan in it of utilizing all these principles and utilizing working with others. The whole thing, step 11, is this recipe put into application on a daily practice. Right? Not weekly, not monthly, daily. Step 11, from page 85 to 89. Go ahead.
So it's important here as we look at this destruction of self-centeredness. Bill's saying if we did not work, we would surely drink again. And if we drank, we would surely die. Faith would be dead indeed. And with us, it's just like that. Here's an amazing comment. My wife and I abandoned ourselves. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. And it was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half.
You know, we get people for we get people 2 months or 2 days and we get all indignant about it. You got a year and a half people giving them the hug, giving them the sniff test, giving him the kind of, is he slurring? Is he smelling like alcohol? Is this like, which Bill showed up here, right?
I always expected that when I went up to hug my sister. She was going to give me the eye test as well as a sniff test every time she hugged me.
Because they can't believe it.
Now, 8 years into my sobriety, and I'm still being treated like that. At first, I was indignant. I was rather upset by it. And then I started to laugh at it, and I thought, it's only her insecurity, not mine.
I'd visit my mom every year and spend time. I think it was the second year or the third year in, I went and visited her, and she had a bar in her house. I said, what's this? She goes, I could never have one before with you around. She says, now I could have a bar in my house and feel okay by having one.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know whether to be flattered or felt indignant, but go ahead.
So here's Bill. He said, it was fortunate that I didn't find any work. My old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half. I found little work. I wasn't too well at the time. I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment.
Okay, so hold it. So that's the human condition. That's not alcoholism. That's a result of all the years of neglect. You know what I mean? And the damage done maybe as the result of all. But what he's left with is the human condition. Right, and all that mayhem that he's had to endure, the house being taken over, the mother-in-law dying, the scrap with the taxi driver, the business associates that he blew up business deals with, like on and on and on and on, right? So everybody knows Bill is a total shit show, a good talker, get things happening. Even his friend in Montreal that he thought he should give him some of his money, like, you know what I mean? Like all this stuff. So now Bill's sober, everybody's very skeptical of. Anybody have that here in their life? People around them very skeptical?
Some of them still are.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think here it's important to point out that when Bill said that I was plagued by self-pity and resentment, he's actually using this to shoot us ahead when we start doing our inventory process. This human condition never leaves us. We're always going to be plagued by that little what I call that Rosetta Stone within us of resentments, that you do something that touches on that, and I'm going to come out with my claws, and I don't know why. And so Bill's telling us that he's always going to be plagued by that. And he said, this nearly drove me back to drink.
So hold on. So this sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. So that means when Bill's feeling all this stuff, and he's not applying the spiritual solution, his mind is going to go back to something that's going to bring about a sense of ease and comfort. Because he's of sound mind, right, he's able to smash that idea, the obsession with the idea. He's able to smash it, which is different than the insanity. Because if it was the insanity, it would take over and he'd be drinking again. All the previous other times, he was drinking. All of a sudden now there's something happening in his life. He sees this thing as an observer, right? And so he sees it. He says, I'm in trouble here. So he keeps applying the solution to overcome this moment of the id, of the brain saying, hey, how about a drink? Right? How about a drink? How about forget all these people, right?
This brings us right back to Silkworth's comment. He said, once we've had this psychic change, we are easily able to resist that desire to drink. Again, emphasizing we're now able to withstand that physical problem, that human problem, that human condition that always would take us back.
And it's not alcoholism he's resisting. He's resisting just the mind, the way it works. It comes up with incredible things when it doesn't have a solution to the human dilemma. Right? Okay, go ahead. But I soon found...
As Silkworth said, I soon found out that when all other measures failed,
going to meetings, talking about himself, right? No, sorry. The gym membership, yoga, page 417, acceptance, surrender, all that stuff. Girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, money, job, proceed, all that stuff, not taking care of the human dilemma that's starting to have weight on him, right? Go ahead.
So as he said, this nearly drove me back to drink. I found that when all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Here's Bill living up to what he said, that if I failed to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, I'm not going to survive what's going on. And so he's building on what he has already built, making certain that he doesn't slip back into that he doesn't want to go back into. And so as Bill said, that many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. And on talking to a man there, I'd be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It's a design for living that works in rough going.
So this came up in my meditation here. I worked as an emergency care worker downtown East Side Vancouver. And part of my job was to put out the medication for all the clients. On a good day, I wouldn't even think of it. Sometimes my brain would go, "You've never had one of these blue ones." And in my mind, I see me taking one. What that is for me is a red light goes out, goes, whoa, what's going on here? Right? What am I not looking at in my life that would create my brain would think that's a good idea to take that? And I'd go work with somebody, and also I'd see what area of my life am I neglecting here. Right? That would be which is different than the insanity. The insanity, I've watched other people at the same job just take the pills. And then after, what am I doing? So there's a buffer there, right? I'm able to deal with the human condition, right? I'm no longer dealing with the illness. I'm just dealing with the human condition. Okay, go ahead.
Right. This is different than the suddenly and resisting the desire.
100%.
So, as Bill said, look, this is the design for living that works in rough going. He's setting up a design for us to continue to live now for the rest of our life. We've taken the steps, we've recovered from alcoholism to ensure that we stay that. We continue to work with others. So we commence to make many fast friends, and a fellowship has grown up among us that's wonderful, and it's great to feel a part of. And he said, the joy of living that we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. He said, it's an incredible joy. I think this next sentence is astounding. He says, I've seen hundreds of families set on their feet in the path that goes somewhere. Families, not just the man, not just the alcoholic, but families that have recovered together and have been set on their feet, and they're now going and living life as they should. He said, I've seen the most impossible domestic situations righted. I've seen feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I've seen men come out of asylums and resume vital places in the lives of their families and communities. Business and professional men have regained their standing. And there's scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. In one western city and its environs, there are 1,000 of us and our families. We meet frequently so that newcomers may find the fellowship that they seek. You know, one of these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 people. We're growing in numbers and in power.
Mind-boggling.
And we look at that today. How fast are we growing today? How fast do you see your group going? Now, what I see is a turnover. I was just remarking to someone about this the other day. I said, my God, I look at this as like a 2-year plan. We see a group of people come in 2 years, and all of a sudden we have another group of 2 people that come in, or people that in the next 2-year period. Those that used to be members or regular attendees, they don't come around anymore.
Because most people were teaching them how to be, like at the World Conference, it was kind of mind-boggling that most people talked about their support group keeping them sober instead of their relationship with something greater than themselves.
Yes.
And how their issues was the most paramount thing to work on instead of helping others, right? And be eliminating of these problems and having a new way of life through a course of action. So these people didn't have meetings to go to all the time. But when they got together, they talked about the fellowship and how to utilize these principles to have a new experience in working with others, the primary purpose, right? We got a couple of minutes left here. We'll finish this off.
So, as we finish out this chapter, this next little paragraph is a comment from Bill and Lois. It said, "An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. He struggles are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. He said, one poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or he would not see our way of life." Again, he's going to make comment of this in chapter 5 when he said there are those who do not recover. They cannot or will not live this rigorous honesty that we demand. Bill then writes on. He said, look, there's a vast amount of fun about all this. He said, some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity. But just underneath, there's this deadly earnestness. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. Now, what's interesting at that little paragraph, I can remember my sister was not one of us. I invited her to come to one of our open meetings. And at the end of the meeting, as we're walking back to the car, she just turned to me in a very casual, matter-of-fact way and said, "You sure got some strange friends." Nothing more was said. Yeah. I understood what she was saying. Yeah. So Bill, as he finished, he gives a real tribute now to Evie. He says most of us feel that we don't need to look any further for utopia. We find it here right now.
Look up that word this week. It's an interesting word, utopia. Look it up. Okay.
He said, each day, my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. What an incredible story.
See, most of it there after you're going through is all about step 11. All of it. He says faith has to work 24 hours a day. I need a recipe where I could live in today, free of yesterday and free of tomorrow. Like they used to have that talk in Ontario, is the man in the glass. Any man can live, right? Mm-hmm. It's an interesting thing. They used to read it at meetings all the time. It's a battle of any man can live the battle of today. It's only when you and I had the battles of yesterday and tomorrow that we break down. But if you have a brain that can't be freed from that, and you're attached from that, and you're a prisoner to that, because all you have is the power of self to fix self, then you're always going to be plagued. Bill's having a new experience through the talk he had with his friend and the application of those principles to have a new experience. And the rest of the book's dedicated toward that, right? And so a lot of people say, go read Bill's story to try to find yourself in it. What I love about the book is the book will tell you what the purpose of what you just read is. So if we read just the first paragraph on There Is a Solution, it'll explain the purpose of Bill's story.
So here's the first paragraph of chapter 2. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill.
Did we see that in his story? Oh, yeah. Right?
Nearly all have recovered.
Did we see that in his story?
Yes. And they've solved the drink problem.
Did we see that in his story? So you want to tie anything up here? Kind of put some, any final thoughts here?
I have no final thoughts. What are yours, Tony?
I'm excited about what the rest of the book has to offer. Because we've just seen in the doctor's opinion, he talked about witnessing this thing, right? And he gave a couple examples of those who became sold on the ideas contained in this book. Again, they both did the course of action before the book was published, by the way. The recipe is the same, is expanded upon, and there's a group of them that are all agreeing on the wording, right? And the application and the outlay of this thing. So it's designed for people who are like us, but it'll also educate people who are not like us about people like us, right? So they'll talk about being a basic text. They'll outline the problem as they see it, right? And experienced it. They'll outline the solution as they were taught it and applied it. And they'll outline the results of that. So the rest of the book is dedicated to what we just read in Bill's story. It's broken up into more segments of examples of what we just read.
And so as we go through this, one of the things that we're going to do is piecemeal, we're going to put together the ideas that have been presented in this book and the plan that they use to implement these ideas as we start taking you through these steps. And logically, we would like to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up through 12. The reality is what we're going to do is talk about how they prepare us, how each individual step prepares us for the next step. It's almost like when you get to step 2, the power of step 2 then pushes you into step 3. And the power of step 3 pushes you into this process of change that we have in steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And as we start to get through that process of change, it powers us into the way of our daily way of living in steps 10 and 11 and 12. And so this is what this book is going to do. It literally, we hope we can make it come alive for you.
Right on. And, live long and prosperous. May the force be with you. We have a Q&A after, questions and answers. For those that wish, we'll close with the Serenity Prayer because we're at the beginning of the book. What makes for what makes for a great life, right?
Oh, God.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. May the force be with you, and we'll post this shortly.